Father wanted $150,000 repayment and insisted I support my spoiled sister who got everything. I exposed Mom's deathbed secret. She's not his daughter. With DNA evidentia everyone. I'm Marcus, and today I want to share with you the most explosive family story about favoritism, entitlement, and a deathbed confession that destroyed everything my father thought he knew about his family. This is about how my father demanded I repay him $150,000 for raising me and insisted I financially support my spoiled golden child sister, and how I responded by revealing a secret my dying mother had entrusted to me, that my sister wasn't his biological daughter, backed by DNA evidence I had secretly obtained. By the end of this story, you'll understand why some secrets, once revealed, can never be taken back, and why sometimes destroying the lie is the only way to escape its consequences. Let me start by giving you the background of my family dynamics. I'm 35 years old, the older of two children, with a sister named Jessica who's 32. Growing up, the favoritism in our household was so obvious that even extended family members commented on it. Jessica was the golden child who could do no wrong, while I was the scapegoat who could do no right. No matter how hard I tried to earn my father's approval, my father, Richard, was a successful corporate executive who valued appearance, status, and traditional measures of success above everything else. My mother, Catherine, was a stay-at-home mom who seemed to live in my father's shadow, always deferring to his opinions and supporting his decisions even when they were clearly unfair. The dynamic between them was strange. She seemed simultaneously devoted to him and resentful of him, though I didn't understand why until much later, from my earliest memories. Jessica was treated like a princess while I was treated like an obligation. She got the best toys, the nicest clothes, and the most attention from both parents, but especially from Dad. I remember being 6 years old and asking for a bicycle for my birthday, only to be told that bicycles were expensive and I needed to learn the value of money. 3 months later, Jessica got a top-of-the-line bicycle for her 3rd birthday, complete with training wheels, a basket, and streamers on the handlebars. This pattern continued throughout our childhood and adolescence. Jessica attended private schools while I went to public school because Dad said I needed to learn to work harder and that private school would make me soft. Jessica got a brand new car for her 16th birthday, while I was told I could buy my own car with money from my part-time job. Jessica's college education was fully funded at an expensive private university, while I worked 2 jobs and took out massive student loans to attend a state school. The explanations for this disparity were always vague and frustrating. Dad would say things like, "Jessica needs more support," or "You're naturally more capable and don't need as much help," or "The classic life isn't fair, and you need to learn that." My mother would occasionally look uncomfortable during these conversations, but never contradicted my father or advocated for more equal treatment. What made the favoritism even more painful was that Jessica wasn't particularly accomplished or hardworking. Despite all the advantages she received, she barely graduated from her expensive university, had never held a steady job for more than a year, and seemed to expect everything to be handed to her without effort. Meanwhile, I had worked my way through school, built a successful career in software engineering, and had become financially independent by my mid-20s. Despite my success, or perhaps because of it, my father never seemed proud of me. My achievements were always met with lukewarm acknowledgement or immediate comparison to what Jessica was doing. When I bought my first house at 28, Dad's response was to comment that Jessica had also been thinking about buying a house and maybe I could help her with the down payment. When I got promoted to senior engineer, he mentioned that Jessica was having trouble finding work and suggested I might be able to get her a job at my company. My mother's health started declining about 4 years ago when she was diagnosed with advanced ovarian cancer. The prognosis was poor from the beginning, and we all knew we were facing the reality of losing her. During her illness, I visited her regularly, helped coordinate her care, and spent as much time with her as I could. Jessica, true to form, visited sporadically and seemed more concerned with how Mom's illness was affecting her emotionally than with actually supporting Mom through her treatment. As Mom's condition worsened, and it became clear she had only weeks left, she asked to speak with me privately. This conversation would change everything I thought I knew about my family. We were alone in her hospice room, and she was weak but lucid. She took my hand and said, "Marcus, there's something I need to tell you before I die. Something I should have told you years ago." What she revealed was stunning. She told me that Jessica was not my father's biological daughter. Mom had had a brief affair with a colleague during a particularly difficult period in her marriage when I was about 3 years old. The affair had ended quickly, but not before she became pregnant with Jessica. She had never told Richard the truth, and she had lived with the secret for over 30 years. Mom explained that the guilt of her deception had eaten at her for decades, but she had been too afraid of the consequences to confess. She said that Richard's extreme favoritism toward Jessica had been her punishment, having to watch him pour love and resources into a child who wasn't his while treating his actual son as secondary. She had never contradicted the favoritism because she felt she deserved the pain of watching her real child be neglected. The revelation was overwhelming and answered so many questions I had never been able to understand. Why had Dad always favored Jessica so completely? Why had Mom never stood up for me? Why did Jessica look so different from both Dad and me? The pieces suddenly fit together in a way that was both clarifying and devastating. Mom told me that Jessica's biological father had died several years ago without ever knowing he had a daughter. She gave me his name and enough information that I could potentially pursue DNA testing if I wanted confirmation. She also made me promise not to reveal the truth while Dad was still believing Jessica was his daughter, saying she didn't want to destroy his relationship with her even though it had come at my expense. I promised to keep her secret, but I also decided I needed confirmation before deciding what to do with this information. After Mom passed away 3 months later, I hired a private investigator to locate Jessica's biological father's family. Through them, I was able to obtain a DNA sample from Jessica's paternal aunt. I also managed to get a DNA sample from Jessica herself during a family dinner by saving her drinking glass. The tests confirmed what Mom had told me. Jessica and I shared only one parent, and Jessica had no biological connection to the man she called Dad for about a year after Mom's death. I sat on this information, unsure what to do with it. Part of me wanted to reveal the truth out of anger for all the years of unfair treatment, but another part of me remembered my promise to Mom and understood that this revelation would destroy my father and my sister's relationship. I decided to keep the secret unless circumstances forced my hand. Those circumstances arrived about 6 weeks ago when my father called and asked to meet with me for a serious financial discussion. I assumed he wanted to talk about Mom's estate or perhaps needed help with some expenses. I was completely unprepared for what he actually wanted. We met at a restaurant, and Dad pulled out a folder full of documents. He explained that he had been doing some calculations and had determined that raising me from birth to age 18 had cost him approximately $150,000. He had itemized everything: food, clothing, housing, education, medical expenses, and even things like family vacations and Christmas presents. He said that now that I was successful and wealthy, his words, it was time for me to repay him for the investment he had made in raising me. I was stunned. This wasn't a joke or a negotiating tactic. He genuinely expected me to write him a check for $150,000 as repayment for my childhood. When I asked why he would expect such a thing, he said that children should honor their parents by taking care of them financially, and that since he had invested so much in me, I owed him a return on that investment. But that wasn't even the worst part. Dad also said that as part of doing the right thing for family, I needed to commit to financially supporting Jessica indefinitely. He said that Jessica was struggling to find her path and needed family support to get established. He suggested I should give her a monthly allowance of at least $3,000 and help her with expenses like rent, car payments, and credit card debt she had accumulated. When I expressed shock and resistance to these demands, Dad became angry and accusatory. He said I was ungrateful for everything he had done for me and that I was abandoning family by refusing to help my sister. He claimed that successful people have an obligation to help family members who are less fortunate and that my refusal was a sign of bad character and selfishness. The conversation became heated, with Dad making increasingly outrageous statements about my obligations to him and Jessica. He said that everything I had achieved was because of the foundation he had provided and that I owed my success to his parenting. He claimed that Jessica's struggles were partly my fault because I hadn't done enough to help her, and that as her older brother, I should have been mentoring and supporting her all along. That's when I decided it was time to reveal the truth that Mom had told me. I had reached my breaking point with the favoritism, the entitlement, and the complete lack of acknowledgement of how unfairly I had been treated my entire life. I looked at my father and said, "Before I agree to give you or Jessica any money, there's something you need to know. Mom told me something before she died, and I've confirmed it with DNA testing." The look on Dad's face was a mixture of confusion and apprehension. I continued, "Jessica is not your biological daughter. Mom had an affair 30 years ago, and Jessica is the result of that affair. I have DNA evidence that proves Jessica and I only share one biological parent, and that you are not her father." The color drained from Dad's face. For several long moments, he just stared at me, unable to speak. Then came the denial and anger. He accused me of making up lies to get out of helping the family. He said I was a cruel and vindictive person who would fabricate such a terrible story just to avoid my responsibilities. He demanded to see the DNA evidence, certain that I was lying. I had anticipated this reaction and had brought copies of the DNA test results with me. I showed him the documentation from the reputable testing lab, the results showing that Jessica and I shared approximately 25% of our DNA, consistent with half-siblings, and the results showing no paternal DNA match between Jessica and samples from my father's medical records that I had obtained years ago. As the reality sank in, Dad's anger turned to devastation. He started crying right there in the restaurant, drawing concerned looks from other diners. He kept saying this can't be true and Catherine wouldn't do this to me, and how could I not know? He was experiencing the complete collapse of what he thought his family had been for the past 32 years. I told him about Mom's confession, about how she had lived with the guilt for decades, and about how her affair partner had died without ever knowing about Jessica. I explained that Mom had asked me to keep the secret, but that his demands for repayment and his insistence that I support Jessica had forced me to reveal the truth. Dad asked why Mom had never told him, and I explained what she had told me, that she had been too afraid of losing her marriage and her family. I also told him something else Mom had confessed, that his extreme favoritism toward Jessica had been partly her fault. She had overcompensated by encouraging his attachment to Jessica, hoping that his love for the child would prevent him from ever questioning the paternity if doubts arose. The revelation explained so much about our family dynamics. Dad's excessive favoritism toward Jessica hadn't been random or unfair. It had been influenced by Mom's subtle steering and encouragement, all designed to cover up her secret. Mom had sacrificed her relationship with me to protect her secret and her marriage, watching me be treated as secondary while doing nothing to stop it. Dad's reaction over the following days was complex and painful to watch. He was devastated by the betrayal and by the realization that he had spent 32 years raising and favoring a child who wasn't his. He was angry at Mom for the deception, angry at me for revealing it, and confused about his feelings toward Jessica. He kept saying he didn't know how to process the fact that the daughter he had loved and prioritized his entire life wasn't actually his daughter. The impact on Jessica was even more dramatic. Dad couldn't face her immediately, so I was the one who had to tell her the truth about her paternity. Her reaction was complete denial at first, insisting that the DNA tests must be wrong and that I was making up lies for some twisted reason. But when Dad finally confirmed the truth and showed her the evidence, her world completely fell apart. Jessica's identity had been built on being Dad's favorite, his princess, the golden child who could do no wrong. Learning that she wasn't actually his biological daughter destroyed that foundation. She became hysterical, accusing Mom of ruining her life, accusing me of destroying the family, and demanding to know why I had revealed the secret if Mom had asked me to keep it. I told Jessica that I had kept Mom's secret for over a year, but that Dad's demands that I repay him $150,000 and commit to supporting her financially indefinitely had forced my hand. I explained that I wasn't going to be financially exploited based on a family structure that was built on lies and favoritism that had benefited her at my expense. The aftermath of this revelation has been catastrophic for my family. Dad has been seeing a therapist to process the betrayal and the loss of what he thought his family was. His relationship with Jessica has become strained and complicated. He still loves her as the child he raised. But the knowledge that she's not his biological daughter has changed something fundamental in how he sees her. Jessica has spiraled into a crisis of identity and entitlement. Without Dad's unconditional support and favoritism, she's been forced to confront her own lack of accomplishments and self-sufficiency. She's angry at everyone. At Mom for the lie, at Dad for treating her differently since learning the truth, and especially at me for revealing the secret. Dad has completely withdrawn his demand that I repay him $150,000, and he's stopped asking me to support Jessica financially. He's apologized for the years of favoritism and acknowledged that he treated me unfairly throughout my childhood. He's said he wants to rebuild our relationship, but it's complicated by the fact that I was the one who delivered the revelation that destroyed his family illusions. As for supporting Jessica, I've made it clear that I won't be providing her with ongoing financial support. I've offered to help her find job opportunities and develop skills that will make her more employable, but I'm not going to fund her lifestyle or enable her continued dependence. She needs to learn to support herself, something she should have learned years ago if she hadn't been so coddled. Some family members and friends have criticized me for revealing Mom's secret, saying that I should have honored her wishes and kept the truth hidden. They argue that I destroyed the family out of spite and revenge, and that the revelation has caused more harm than good. They suggest that I should have found another way to refuse Dad's demands without dropping such a devastating truth bomb. But I disagree with those criticisms. I kept Mom's secret for over a year despite having no obligation to protect a lie that had harmed me my entire life. I only revealed the truth when Dad demanded that I pay him $150,000 for raising me and commit to supporting Jessica indefinitely. At that point, the secret was being used as leverage to exploit me financially, and I had every right to defend myself with the truth. The revelation has been painful for everyone involved, but it's also been liberating for me in several ways. I finally understand why I was treated so differently from Jessica throughout my childhood, and I know it wasn't because I was somehow less worthy or lovable. The favoritism was the result of adult deception and guilt, not anything wrong with me as a child. I also no longer feel any obligation to maintain relationships with family members who have consistently treated me as less important than my sister. Dad's apology and acknowledgement of his unfair treatment is meaningful, but it doesn't undo decades of making me feel like I wasn't good enough. Jessica's anger at me for revealing the secret is ironic considering she's been the beneficiary of lies and favoritism her entire life. The most important lesson I've learned from this experience is that family secrets always have consequences, and those consequences usually hurt innocent people. Mom's decision to hide Jessica's true paternity might have preserved her marriage, but it condemned me to a childhood of being treated as secondary to my sister. The lie affected every family relationship and dynamic for over 30 years. I also learned that you can't let yourself be financially exploited out of misplaced obligation to family members who have never treated you fairly. Dad's demand for $150,000 and ongoing support for Jessica was outrageous regardless of the paternity issue, but it became even more absurd once the truth was revealed. Family relationships should be based on mutual love and respect, not on financial extraction. Looking forward, I'm working on building healthier boundaries with my family and focusing on my own life and happiness. My relationship with Dad may eventually heal, but it will be a relationship based on honesty and equal treatment, not on the dysfunctional favoritism of the past. My relationship with Jessica is probably permanently damaged, but that's a consequence of her being unable to accept that her privileged position was built on lies. The most satisfying aspect of this entire situation is that I finally stood up for myself and refused to continue being treated as the family scapegoat. For years, I had accepted unfair treatment and made excuses for favoritism that was obvious to everyone. By revealing the truth about Jessica's paternity, I freed myself from a family dynamic that had been crushing me since childhood. Some people might say I was cruel to reveal such a devastating secret, but I would argue that living a lie is crueler than revealing the truth. My father spent 32 years investing everything in a daughter who wasn't his while neglecting his actual son. Jessica built her entire identity on being the favored child without ever questioning why she was treated so differently. Those lies needed to be exposed before they could cause even more damage. If there's one thing I want people to take from this story, it's that you should never let yourself be financially exploited or emotionally manipulated by family members who have consistently treated you unfairly. Family relationships should be reciprocal and based on genuine love, not on obligation or guilt. And sometimes the only way to escape a toxic family dynamic is to expose the lies it was built on, no matter how painful that truth might be.